Discipline is forged, not found. This may sound simple, but it carries the depth of lifetimes. People often believe that some are born disciplined, as if it is a gift handed down by the stars. But discipline is not a gift. It is a fire that you must walk through again and again until the impurities of laziness, distraction, and doubt are burned away. In a factory, this truth becomes evident. There is no space for randomness. Everything has a time, everything has a place. You cannot wake up one morning and decide you will press the button whenever you feel like it. No, the machine does not wait for your mood. The belt does not stop for your emotions. If you are not in tune with the rhythm, you are simply out of place. This, in essence, is the crucible in which discipline is shaped. People imagine motivation to be the fuel, but motivation is like the wind. It comes and goes. Some days you feel like doing it, some days you don't. But discipline, that is the engine. It does not rely on the weather. It runs because you decide it must. Every time a worker clocks in on time, despite the body being tired, despite the mind craving rest, discipline is being forged. Not spoken, not shown on social media, but silently, steadily, inside. What's beautiful is that no one else needs to know. In fact, most of the time no one notices. You follow the routine, show up, do the same task again and again while the world looks away. But inside you, something is hardening. Not in a rigid way, but in a resilient way. Like steel being tempered in the fire, cooled in the water, then forged again. Each repetition, each moment of showing up is not boring. It is alchemy. Now, this alchemy is not exclusive to factories. It can happen anywhere. But inside a factory, it becomes impossible to ignore. You see people who do not speak grand philosophies, who do not read books on self-help, but whose lives speak louder than any words. They have mastered the art of showing up, of doing what needs to be done, not because someone is watching, but because it is their way of being. Discipline is not about control. It is about freedom. Strange, isn't it? We think freedom means doing what we want, when we want. But that is chaos, not freedom. Real freedom comes when you have the inner strength to do what is needed, even when every part of you resists. That moment, when you push through the resistance, is when the forging happens. Inside the factory, there is a quiet understanding among those who have worked there long enough. They don't need to say much. Their bodies move with a certain grace, a rhythm built over years of repetition. Their eyes are calm because they've stared at the same pattern for hours and hours. But within that stillness, there is power. That is not boredom, it is mastery. When you watch a new worker, you can see the difference, the hesitations, the misbeats, the mental chatter that interferes with action. But after months or years, that chatter fades. Action becomes pure, not reactive, not anxious, just precise. That is the sign of discipline that has been earned, not gifted. And once you taste that level of clarity, of consistency, you no longer depend on external push. The inner motor takes over. The world may not celebrate this kind of discipline. It prefers flashy results, instant success, and dramatic breakthroughs. But in the factory of life, as in the actual factory, greatness is built in quiet corners by people who have chosen consistency over excitement. The truth is, discipline is not about suppressing yourself. It is about aligning yourself, aligning with a higher purpose, even if that purpose is just doing your work well today. And in this alignment, there is a subtle joy, not the kind that jumps and shouts, but the kind that sits quietly in your chest, knowing that you did what needed to be done. No shortcuts, no excuses, just a steady beat, like the hum of the machines around you. That is where discipline is born. Not found in books, not gifted by gurus, but forged in the ordinary, repetitive, often unseen moments of your life. Repetition builds resilience, not boredom. Most people run from repetition. They see it as dull, lifeless, a waste of potential. They crave novelty, excitement, something new to keep their senses alive. But life does not unfold in grand gestures every day. Life happens in cycles, in breath, in heartbeat, in the sun rising and setting without fail. And when you understand this, you stop looking at repetition as a punishment. You start seeing it as a pathway. Inside a factory, repetition is not optional. The same task must be done thousands of times. Pull this lever, place that part, check this component again and again and again. For someone watching from the outside, it looks mechanical, robotic. But for the one doing it with awareness, something deeper is happening. Each repetition is an invitation to refine, to master, to find stillness in motion. You begin to notice things you didn't see the first 100 times. The subtle difference in weight, the sound that changes ever so slightly, the perfect angle that saves half a second. What seemed monotonous begins to reveal layers. But this revelation only comes to those who endure, those who stay, those who do not flinch when the mind says, "This again?" In today's world, everything is designed to distract. Apps, news, entertainment, all pulling your attention in 1,000 directions. But in a space of repetition, your mind has no choice but to face itself. It rebels, it complains, but slowly it begins to settle. It begins to align. And in that alignment, you become strong. Not just physically, but mentally. Repetition trains the mind to go beyond comfort. It trains you to stay present when everything in you wants to escape. There is a difference between repetition done unconsciously and repetition done with awareness. The unconscious worker drags through the day, counting the minutes, resenting the task, but the aware one becomes sharper, calmer, more precise with each cycle. It is not the work that changes, it is the one doing it. This is why some people burn out while others thrive in the same environment. The difference is how they receive repetition, as burden or as training. Resilience is not built in comfort. It is built when you are tested again and again, in the same way, under the same pressure. Like steel being hammered into foam, it is the constant impact that gives it strength. A single hit may leave a mark, but it is the repeated strikes that shape the metal. In the same way, repetition sculpts the human spirit. It pushes, breaks, reforms, and in that process you become unshakable. People say they want to be strong, focused, disciplined, but they want it instantly, without the grind. Repetition is the grind. It is the sharpening stone that refines your edge, and yes, it can feel endless. It can feel thankless. But that is precisely why it is powerful. Because when you learn to embrace the process without needing reward or applause, your actions gain a different energy, a purity. In factories, this kind of resilience is visible. You can see it in the old worker who no longer needs to be told what to do. Their hands move from memory, but not mindless memory. It is embedded wisdom, born not of theory, but of 1,000 repeated moments. You cannot teach this, you can only live it, and the longer you stay with it, the deeper it sinks into you. Even in life beyond the factory, this truth remains. Whether it is learning a skill, building a habit, or growing through pain, it is the repetition that carries you. Not the one-time decision, not the rare flash of motivation, but the daily choice to show up again and again, especially when you don't feel like it. That is where real growth happens, not in the rush of excitement, but in the quiet commitment to the process. This kind of repetition doesn't make you dull, it makes you unbreakable, because when life throws its chaos, you have already trained in the fire. You have practiced steadiness when the mind screamed for distraction. You have chosen presence over escape, and slowly that repetition becomes rhythm. That rhythm becomes strength. That strength becomes resilience, and resilience, once born, carries you through storms that others cannot endure. Every machine has a rhythm. So does your life. When you walk into a factory, the first thing you notice is not the noise, but the rhythm beneath the noise. The clanking of metal, the hiss of steam, the turning of gears. All seem chaotic at first, but stand still for a moment, listen a little deeper, and suddenly you begin to hear the order in the chaos. The repetition of movements, the timing of processes, the synchronization of parts. It is not disorder, it is a dance, a mechanical dance. And like this, your life too is moving in rhythms whether you are aware of it or not. In the factory, the machines are not just running randomly, they are calibrated, balanced, tuned to operate at a certain frequency. If one part moves too fast or too slow, the whole process suffers. This balance is not found by chance, it is built through observation, trial, precision. In the same way, your life has rhythms. Your energy, your thoughts, your emotions, they all have their own pace, their own timing. But most people are never still long enough to listen to it. We have been taught to rush, to move faster, to squeeze more into less time. But speed without rhythm leads to chaos. Just like a machine forced to run too fast begins to wear out, overheat, or even break, a life out of rhythm begins to crumble from the inside. Fatigue sets in, confusion clouds the mind, and without realizing it, we start living reactively, not rhythmically. There is a grace that comes with rhythm, Watch a skilled factory worker and you will see it. Their movements are not hurried but efficient, not forced but fluid. They do not waste motion. They do not second guess. Their body has absorbed the timing of the task. This is not mechanical dullness, it is presence. When you are in rhythm with your work, there is no resistance. Things happen smoothly, not because they are easy, but because you are aligned. This alignment is not just physical, it is mental, emotional, even spiritual. When your thoughts, actions, and intentions move in harmony, you begin to operate like a well-tuned machine. You stop feeling exhausted by life. You start flowing with it. But to find this rhythm, you must first slow down enough to observe. Just like an engineer studies the pulse of a machine, you must learn to study the pulse of your own being. Your body has its own cycles. It tells you when it needs rest, when it's ready for work, when it wants stillness. Your mind has its own currents. Some days it is sharp, some days dull. Your emotions rise and fall like tides. These are not weaknesses, these are natural rhythms. The problem begins when we start resisting them, when we push when we need to pause, or stop when we need to move. This is how disconnection begins. In the factory, every process has a timing. You cannot pour before the mold is ready. You cannot press before the material is set. Everything has its place and its moment. Life is no different. Trying to force an outcome before its time only leads to friction. But when you learn to wait, to act in the right moment, things unfold with minimal resistance. This is not laziness, this is intelligence. People often ask, how do I find balance in life? The answer is rhythm. Balance is not about doing less. It is about doing things in the right sequence, with the right timing. Just like in music, you cannot play all the notes at once. You must know when to pause, when to hit the silent peak. Life too is a symphony, and you are the conductor. In a factory, if even one cog is out of sync, the entire system suffers. The same is true for your inner world. If your thoughts are in one direction, your emotions in another, and your actions somewhere else entirely, you become fragmented. But when everything begins to move in unison, something powerful awakens. You begin to feel grounded, focused, clear. This clarity does not come from controlling everything. It comes from understanding your own inner tempo. It comes from respecting the seasons of your mind and body. There will be times of high energy, times of reflection, times of silence. Each one has its role, just like each part in a machine. When you fight this, you suffer. When you align with it, you flow. Rhythm is not something you impose, it is something you uncover. It is already there, beneath the noise, beneath the distractions. It reveals itself in silence, in repetition, in observation. Once you find it, you no longer have to force your way through life. You begin to glide through it, like a well-tuned machine moving effortlessly in perfect time. Transformation begins in unnoticed places. Everyone looks for change in the grand moments. People wait for breakthroughs, for turning points, for something dramatic to shake their lives and make them new. But real transformation doesn't arrive with fireworks. It doesn't knock loudly at your door. It happens quietly, in places you often ignore, in moments you overlook, and in places like factories, this truth becomes undeniable. A factory is not a glamorous place. There are no red carpets, no spotlights, just the steady hum of machines, the smell of grease and effort, the faces of people who repeat tasks with a kind of unspoken devotion. To an outsider, it may seem dull, but for those who pay attention, something deeper is taking place. In the repetition of tasks, in the precision of movement, in the quiet endurance of the workers, transformation is constantly unfolding. There is a power in the ordinary, not the power that demands attention, but the power that sustains. When someone wakes up every morning, ties their shoes, steps into the same environment, and gives their best without applause, that is where the seed of transformation lies. It is not in the loud declarations, but in the silent choices. In the decision to keep going when no one is watching, to stay present even when the task seems small. Inside a factory, change doesn't come suddenly, it comes piece by piece. A new skill learned, a faster way discovered, a deeper patience developed. These things are not announced, but they grow. And over time, the person who once struggled to lift, to think, to focus, becomes someone entirely different. The same face, the same job, but a new being inside. The change is subtle but profound. Most people miss this because they are looking for excitement. They want transformation to be thrilling. But just like the roots of a tree grow deep in the dark soil, far from sight, your growth also begins in the places where no one is clapping. The unnoticed places, the daily routines, the uncelebrated efforts. That's where something within you begins to shift. The human spirit is always evolving, but it needs the right conditions. Pressure, rhythm, silence, repetition. These are not things we usually associate with growth, yet they are exactly what shape us. In a factory, these conditions are ever present. The pressure to meet a deadline, the rhythm of machines, the silence of focused workers, the repetition of the same motion day after day. These are not barriers, they are catalysts. What you do with these conditions decides who you become. You can resist them, complain, drift through the day and remain unchanged, or you can lean into them. Find your center within the noise, your stillness within the motion. And when you do that, something miraculous begins. The worker is no longer just working, they are transforming. Their body, their mind, their very way of being starts to evolve. This kind of transformation doesn't need validation. It doesn't need someone to approve or admire it. It is internal, silent, steady. The man who once grew frustrated easily now carries patience in his breath. The woman who once doubted her strength now moves with quiet confidence. No celebration, no announcement. Just a different way of walking, of standing, of seeing the world. We often think we need to escape our environment to grow, that we must travel to faraway places, meet certain people, read certain books. While all of that has its place, never underestimate the power of being fully present where you are, especially in the places that feel unnoticed, uninspiring, repetitive. Because these are the places where your endurance is tested, your focus is sharpened, your identity is redefined. In a world addicted to noise and novelty, it is easy to miss the beauty of the unnoticed. But that beauty is real. It is alive in every factory worker who returns each day with the same quiet determination. It is alive in every hand that lifts, every footstep taken in rhythm, every breath drawn with intention. That is not just survival. That is transformation in motion. Change that comes from the inside is the most powerful kind. It is not dependent on circumstances. It is not shaken by opinions. It is born in the still moments, the unnoticed efforts, the everyday grind. And the more you honor those spaces, the more they shape you into something. In the modern world, success is often measured by external outcomes. How much money you make, what title you hold, how many people recognize your name. But real education is not about the outward display of accomplishments. It is about inner clarity. It is about how well you understand yourself, how balanced you remain in chaos, how consciously you respond to situations, and how deeply you perceive life. Inner clarity is not something that can be taught through textbooks or obtained through degrees. It arises when education becomes a process of refining your inner instrument, your mind, your emotions, your energy, your awareness. Most people go through years of formal education without ever being introduced to themselves. They learn about the world, about history, science, mathematics, and languages, but they remain strangers to their own minds. They do not know how to deal with anxiety, how to manage their anger, how to relate to others without conflict, or how to simply be with themselves in stillness. Without inner clarity, all the external success becomes fragile. A small failure can shatter it. A little criticism can break confidence. A moment of uncertainty can lead to complete confusion. When you have inner clarity, you begin to see that life is not something happening to you. It is something that unfolds through you. Your choices, your thoughts, your words, your energy, all of it is shaping your experience. You stop reacting blindly and start responding consciously. You are no longer a puppet of your emotions or a victim of circumstances. You become the creator of your own reality. This is the power that real education should give, not just the ability to earn, but the ability to live well. Clarity does not come from cramming information into the mind. It comes from emptying the clutter and seeing things as they are. Most of the time, what clouds our perception is not a lack of knowledge, but the noise of opinions, fears, assumptions, and past experiences. Education must become a process of cleaning the lens through which you see the world. Only then can you perceive with sharpness, act with wisdom, and move through life with grace. It's possible to read 1,000 books and still be lost within, but even one moment of deep inner clarity can change the way you approach every aspect of life. This clarity is not just intellectual, it is experiential. It reflects in how you make decisions, how you communicate, how you treat others, how you handle success and failure. When you are clear within, you do not need to seek validation outside. You are not swayed by every opinion or circumstance. You act from a space of stillness, not from restlessness. True education should prepare you to handle the complexity of life without becoming chaotic within. It should not only sharpen your intellect but also deepen your insight. It should not only teach you how to think but also how to stop thinking when it is not needed. Most people are caught in a constant inner chatter, unable to find silence even for a moment. But clarity arises only in silence. It is in the stillness of mind that true intelligence begins to shine. In the absence of inner clarity, people often mistake cleverness for wisdom. They become smart in manipulating situations, in winning arguments, in achieving goals, but they do not become wise. Wisdom is not just about what you know, it is about how you live, how you relate to life. It is about aligning with the deeper truths that go beyond logic and intellect. This kind of wisdom emerges when your education touches the core of who you are, not just the surface of what you know. When education helps you become more conscious, more balanced, and more aware, it starts transforming not only your life but also the lives of those around you. A person with inner clarity becomes a presence that brings calmness in chaos, direction in confusion, and insight in complexity. Such a person is not just successful in worldly terms, they are successful in the truest sense because they know how to live fully, how to love deeply, and how to walk through life without being burdened by it. In a world filled with distractions, opinions, and constant noise, clarity becomes a rare and precious gift. It is not about knowing everything. It is about knowing what matters. It is about discerning truth from illusion, intention from impulse, depth from decoration. Education, if it does not lead you toward this clarity, remains incomplete because in the end, it is not how much you have learned that matters, but how clearly you can see, how wisely you can act, and how peacefully. In today's world, the word education has become so closely tied to institutions, degrees, and formal qualifications that we have almost forgotten its original purpose. Education is not about memorizing facts or chasing certificates. It is about becoming capable of shaping your own life. When education becomes a lifestyle, it no longer ends with the classroom or the textbook. It becomes a continuous, conscious act of growing, of refining, of discovering who you are and what it means to live fully. It is not something you do for a few years. It is something that colors the way you eat, speak, walk, think, and relate to everything around you. Many people believe that once they complete their formal education, their learning is done. They hang their degree on a wall and assume the journey is complete. But the truth is, real education doesn't end with graduation. It begins there. What you learn in school may help you enter the world, but how you evolve after that is entirely in your hands. If you stop learning after school, your life will become repetitive and mechanical. But if you approach each day with a willingness to learn, life becomes a dynamic, ever-changing experience. This willingness to keep learning, unlearning, and relearning, that is the spirit of education as a lifestyle. When education becomes a lifestyle, it is no longer limited by curriculum or syllabus. It becomes self-driven, self-inspired. You learn from conversations, from silence, from failure, from nature, from art, from observation. You begin to see that every interaction is a lesson, every experience a teacher. The way someone smiles at you, the way you feel in the middle of a crowd, the way you respond when things don't go your way, these are not just moments, they are opportunities to grow. And growth is the essence of education. A lifestyle of education means that you are always in the process of becoming, not better than someone else, but better than who you were yesterday. It means you never assume you know it all. You remain curious, open, humble. You listen not just to reply, but to understand. You observe not just to label, but to truly see. You question your assumptions, your beliefs, your habits, not to criticize yourself, but to refine your way of living. This kind of learning doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you inwardly strong and outwardly gentle. To live education means that you bring awareness into everything you do. Whether you are cooking a meal, cleaning a room, working on a project, or sitting in meditation, each act becomes a chance to deepen your presence, to sharpen your attention. You don't just live on the surface, rushing from task to task. You begin to notice the textures, the subtleties, the hidden patterns of life. You learn not just from big moments, but from the small, quiet details that most people overlook. And in this attentive way of living, you begin to experience life more richly. An educated life is not one that is filled with theories, it is one that is rooted in understanding. It does not seek to impress others, but to express truth. It is not driven by fear or competition, but by purpose and alignment. You are not just collecting knowledge, you are applying it, living it, embodying it. Your life becomes your message, and your presence itself begins to teach without words. People may not remember what you studied, but they will feel the quality of your being, and that quality is shaped by how consciously you live, not by what degrees you hold. When education becomes a lifestyle, it brings a sense of joy and freshness to everything. You don't get bored because you are always discovering. You don't feel stuck because every situation is a chance to learn something new. Even mistakes become valuable because they teach you something about yourself. This transforms the way you approach challenges, relationships, success, and even failure. Life stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something you actively participate in, something you co-create with awareness and intention. This way of living requires responsibility. It means you no longer blame others for your stagnation or suffering. You recognize that how you experience life is shaped by your own thoughts, choices, and actions. This does not mean you control everything, but it means you are no longer passive. You take ownership of your growth. You do not wait for permission to evolve. You realize that education is not a system to follow, it is a fire to nurture. And once that fire is lit, it lights up everything you do.